Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics, and in this video, having seen the various detractors having tried to pick up the pieces and still come up with ways to attack Reeves' budget yesterday, I'd like to take a look at why they got their predictions so badly wrong. Why was it that they fundamentally misunderstood what Reeves' objectives were when she was not exactly shy about explaining them? But first, for daily political commentary, please click the subscribe button so you don't miss out. So I suppose the first shock for Reeves' opponents, especially on the right, was learning that her office had a picture of Conservative Chancellor Nigel Lawson taken down. I mean, that'd be obvious, but replaced by one of Ellen Wilkinson, who's a former Labour minister, but also had been a member of the Communist Party. Might have been a bit of an early warning to them. Safe to say the budget was not what detractors on left or right said this budget would be, but why not? The budget, as the Financial Times explains, is exactly what anyone who read Labour's manifesto knew what was going to happen. So the people who were describing something very different to what was announced yesterday either hadn't read the manifesto or, more likely, didn't believe Labour intended to stick to it. Those on the right, for example, knew that the Tories had salted the earth for Labour. They'd deliberately abandoned what was left of their investment strategy. They'd cut taxes at the last minute in a deliberate attempt to blow a hole in Labour's spending plans. They clearly didn't believe that Reeves would prioritise those spending plans and do whatever was necessary to maintain them. It's like they believed their own hype that Labour under Starmer were too timid to do anything radical. This budget has boosted spending by the biggest amount of any budget since the year 2000, when the economy was actually doing well. They obviously didn't believe Reeves would dare with the economy in the gutter. This is why they're left complaining about the tax bill. Every single front page of every single mainstream national paper this morning, without exception, is focusing on the size of the tax rise, this £40 billion over 5 years, sorry. Not that they say over 5 years, they just say £40 billion. And it's every single one. And you think, why? It's because it's all they've got left. It's not even a good line. Polling made clear that most of the public wanted to prioritise public spending. They even said, even if that means taxes have to go up in return for more public spending. And so Reeves has done what the public wanted. She's boosted spending by as much as she realistically could, whilst shielding many of those at the lower end, at least much more than the Tories ever did, including business owners, small business owners, from those tax rises. And detractors on the left have fared no better. They insisted that this budget would be a continuation of Tory austerity. There was never any evidence for this, by the way, although Labour made a mistake in emphasising the tough decisions in the months leading up to the budget. At no point did they ever suggest that there was a threat to day-to-day spending. The tough decisions were entirely about how to pay for it, not whether it would happen. So anyone talking about austerity in connection with this budget before yesterday is now exposed as either a fool or a liar. And if they still talk about it in those terms, they're just a liar. Every independent analysis says that this budget boosts day-to-day spending in real terms. Even Paul Johnson from the IFS, which is easily the most critical of the independent groups, largely, I think, because he's still upset that he didn't quite understand political speak in manifestos, still said that the budget is investing in the long term, and this is unlike what chancellors in the past facing similar pressures have done. And that may well be one of the most interesting comments. Rachel Reeves did not behave in the way that previous chancellors have in similar situations. So perhaps all the detractors on both left and right genuinely believed that this Labour budget would be easy for them to tear apart from both wings of politics. They may have held those beliefs based on past behaviour of completely different people running the Treasury, not appreciating that every now and then someone comes along that bucks the trend. The budget won't be what anyone wants in detail, of course. There will always be details you can say, well, that's not right and that's not acceptable. The Chancellor herself will not be entirely happy with it. Every independent economist has said Reeves was facing a very bad inheritance and no options were good. And indeed, there have been many not good options taken. But I said before the budget, the broad shape was no. We knew it was going to increase day-to-day spending. How did we know? The manifesto said so. Oh, but why should we believe the manifesto when actually governments do often break at least some manifesto promises? Because Starmer at the start of 2024 ordered that the manifesto be trimmed down to only promises that they could be certain of delivering. He called it bomb-proofing. He explicitly said he wanted the manifesto to be the bare minimum they deliver, with the expectation that they would actually intend to go further in government. So given that the manifesto specifically ruled out a return to austerity, and the manifesto was made to be deliberately tame to make sure it was deliverable, it actually made no sense to suppose spending wouldn't go up. But the economy is knackered and the cost of borrowing is high. Besides, you can't use borrowing to cover day-to-day spending anyway. Not only is it poor economics at the best of times, but Liz Truss demonstrated to the world what happens if you try. So the increased spending could only come from higher taxes. And because Labour had promised to protect those on lower incomes from the tax rises, it was even predictable where a lot of those tax rises would come from. Capital gains tax, a no-brainer. No one on a low to middle income pays capital gains tax. A change to inheritance tax, same sort of thing. But all independent economists said that Reeves would have to get the lion's share from income tax, VAT or national insurance. But Labour had ruled out an increase in VAT and an increase to the rate of the individual income tax bands. Now, I have said, in theory, Labour could create a new income tax band without breaking that promise. But the easiest politically was an increase in employers' national insurance contributions. And Paul Johnson of the IFS aside, who everyone understands, or everyone who understands politics, understood that Labour were not ruling this out in the manifesto. The Tories were shouting about it all through the election campaign and journalists joined in. What about employers' contributions, they said. Are you ruling out raising those? And Labour would never say. Which is the clearest sign you can ever get that they are absolutely prepared to go there. As for the big boost the departments for health and education got, again, not a shock. Labour must get the NHS and education back on track. Just politically, these are two crucial departments for them. The Foreign Office and the Home Office are the two most senior government departments, below the Treasury, of course, and for good reason, but health and education are already they're always incredibly important to Labour government because they're incredibly important to their voters. So progress will need to be quick and noticeable. So, of course, they've got a cash injection early. And, of course, with a sluggish economy, that you're not going to turn around quickly, and Labour need, above all else, for people to feel that they're better off at the next election. The OBR analysis backed up Labour's emphasis on this decade of renewal, because they highlighted that growth isn't going to look anything special over the 5-year forecast, but it does look good over a 10-year forecast. But you don't get 10 years in government. You get 5 at most. Then you have to call an election. So Labour need to make sure that people feel that there's more money in their pockets in the next 5 years. There's not going to be any trickle down because the economy is not going to grow to trickle anything. That means pay has to go up in real terms. So the public sector pay awards and the boost to the minimum wage, these were also predictable. And indeed, I'm going to say I said a lot of this before the election. And it cannot be a one-off either, because people will have forgotten about this boost by the election, so it has to keep coming. So although there were some genuine surprises in the details, I was surprised defence got a boost, for example. The overall shape of the budget was essentially clear to see a long time ago. And the only people who couldn't see it were those whose political bias, which we all have, forced them to believe that Labour were not going to stick to what they said in this deliberately tame manifesto. That's why the papers had nowhere to go today. So they had to fall back on talking about the size of the tax bill. It's because they never considered that Rachel Reeves was actually going to do what Labour promised in the manifesto. They thought to themselves, the Tories salted the earth. It would take something really radical for her to maintain spending increases, so she's not going to do it. But she did. And that's where they went wrong. I wonder if they'll decide to avoid underestimating her in future. But there we are anyway. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe. And if you'd like to support the channel further, you can join for memberships. Thanks for watching. And until next time, I'll see you later.